admiral of the Imperial fleet stood before the massive viewport of his flagship, watching the human vessel approach through the star-speckled darkness. The ship was unremarkable at first glance, a simple geometric design, roughly cylindrical, with none of the elegant curves or intimidating spikes that marked the warships of civilized species. It moved with steady purpose through the void, its single engine trail a pale blue ribbon against the black. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, mandibles clicking nervously. "The human ship is maintaining its approach vector. It shows no signs of stopping or requesting permission to enter our space." His 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the approaching vessel. The humans had only made contact with the greater galactic community 3 cycles ago, and already they were causing problems. Their first diplomatic mission had been a disaster. They had refused to submit to the standard dominance protocols, actually laughed when presented with the tribute demands, and worst of all, they had somehow convinced 2 minor systems to break away from control. "How large is their fleet?" asked, though he already suspected the answer. "That's just it, sir. Our long-range sensors show only the 1 ship. No support vessels, no carriers, nothing. Just that single craft." The admiral's mandibles spread wide in what his species considered a smile. The humans were even more foolish than he had thought. Did they really believe they could challenge the might of the Empire with a single ship? His fleet consisted of 200 vessels, including 12 dreadnoughts and 47 heavy cruisers. Each of his dreadnoughts carried enough firepower to glass a planet. "Open a channel," he commanded. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the human vessel. The commander was a female with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. She wore a simple dark uniform with minimal decoration, so different from the elaborate regalia that marked proper military rank among civilized species. "This is Admiral of the Imperial Fleet. You have entered restricted space without authorization. Surrender your vessel and prepare to be boarded, or we will open fire." The human commander's expression didn't change. "This is Captain Sarah of the UES Defiance. Admiral, you are in violation of the accords signed by your government last year. This system is under human protection now. I'm ordering you to withdraw your fleet immediately." His laugh was a harsh, chittering sound. "You order me? With what authority? You have 1 ship, Captain. I have 200. Mathematics would suggest you reconsider your position." "I've always been bad at math," replied with a slight smile. "But I'm very good at keeping promises. And I promised the colonists on 442B that they would be safe. So I'll ask you once more, politely, withdraw your fleet." "Or what?" "Or I'll make you withdraw it." The channel closed before could respond. He stood there for a moment, stunned by the sheer audacity of the human. Then his shock transformed into rage. How dare these upstart primitives mock the Empire? How dare they threaten him? "All ships," he commanded, "target the human vessel. Prepare to fire on my command. Sir, his science officer interrupted. Our sensors are detecting some unusual energy readings from the human ship. What kind of readings? Unknown, sir. The signatures don't match anything in our database. It's almost like they're charging some kind of weapon system, but the power levels are, well, they're impossible. Dismissed the report with a wave of his clawed hand. Primitive human technology could hardly threaten ships that had conquered half the galaxy. Ignore it. Continue targeting sequence. On his tactical display, 200 red triangles representing his fleet surrounded the single blue dot that marked the human ship. The Defiance hung motionless in space, apparently resigned to its fate. Perhaps the human captain had finally realized the hopelessness of her situation. Sir, all ships report ready to fire. Fire! 200 ships unleashed their fury simultaneously. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and fusion missiles streaked across the void toward the lone human vessel. The display showed a convergence of destructive energy that could have shattered a moon. But when the light faded and the sensors cleared, the human ship remained exactly where it had been. Not a single weapon had found its target. Every shot had somehow missed, despite the impossible odds against such an occurrence. What happened? Demanded. Sir, I don't understand it. All our targeting systems functioned normally, but somehow every weapon went wide of the mark. On the human ship began to change. Panels slid open along its hull, revealing something that made its blood turn to ice. Weapons. Hundreds of them. Weapons unlike anything he had ever seen, crackling with energies that shouldn't exist. Captain's voice came over the communications array, calm as ever. My turn. The first shot from the human ship was unlike anything Admiral had witnessed in 40 years of military service. Instead of the familiar glow of plasma or the sharp lance of particle beams, this weapon fired what appeared to be pure darkness, a void in space itself that streaked toward his leftmost dreadnought. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted, but it was already too late. The dark projectile struck the IFS Dominator amidships. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the massive dreadnought simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not blown apart. It was as if reality had decided the ship had never been there in the first place. Where 2 kilometers of hardened battle steel had been, now there was only empty space. What was that? His voice came out as barely a whisper. Sir, I'm reading nothing. The Dominator isn't showing up as destroyed on our sensors. It's just gone, like it was never there. Captain's voice echoed across the fleet's communication channels. That was a warning shot. I have 847 more of those, and that's just one of my weapon systems. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawing your fleet. His mind raced. The Dominator had carried 8,000 crew members. 8,000 lives snuffed out in an instant by some impossible human weapon. But he couldn't show weakness now. The entire empire was watching. If he retreated from a single human ship, it would shatter their military reputation across the galaxy. All ships focus fire on the human vessel. Maximum intensity. This time, his fleet concentrated their fire in a narrow cone, ensuring that even if their targeting systems failed again, the sheer volume of energy would overwhelm any defense. The space around the human ship became a brilliant inferno of destructive force. When the barrage ended, the Defiance remained untouched, but now could see how. The space around the human ship was wrong. Light bent around it in impossible ways, and their weapons' fire seemed to slide past it, as if the vessel existed in a slightly different dimension. Spatial manipulation technology, his science officer reported in a stunned voice. They're bending space-time itself around their ship. Our weapons are literally missing them because they're not quite where they appear to be. How is that possible? Our scientists said such technology was centuries away from being practical. Sir, perhaps human science developed differently than ours. 3 more dark voids streaked out from the Defiance. 3 more of ships simply vanished. A heavy cruiser, a destroyer, and one of his precious carriers. 24,000 more lives gone without even the dignity of an explosion. 15 seconds, Captain announced calmly. His tactical officer was frantically working at his console. Sir, I'm analyzing the trajectory patterns of their dark matter weapons. If I'm right about their targeting system, they can hit any ship in our fleet with perfect accuracy, regardless of our defensive positioning. Dark matter weapons. Had heard rumors of such things, theoretical devices that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. But they were supposed to be impossible to create, requiring energy outputs greater than most stars. It's the only explanation for what we're seeing. Somehow, the humans have learned to weaponize dark matter, turning it into projectiles that simply erase whatever they hit from existence. On the main display, more weapon ports were opening along the human ship's hull. These looked different, sleeker, with a blue-white glow that hurt to look at directly. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 ships in the outer formation. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Felt his world crumbling around him. His fleet, the pride of the Empire, was falling apart before a single human vessel. But his pride demanded that he see this through, even if it meant the destruction of his entire force. 5 seconds, his voice cut through his thoughts. The human ship fired again, but this time it wasn't the dark matter weapons. Instead, brilliant blue-white beams lanced out from multiple points along its hull. Unlike the erasure weapons, these beams struck their targets and caused spectacular explosions. 6 ships died in the space of 2 heartbeats, their hulks spinning away as glowing debris. Antimatter beams, his science officer whispered. They're firing concentrated streams of antimatter. Couldn't speak. Antimatter weapons were known to be possible, but the energy requirements to create and contain significant amounts of antimatter were staggering. Most civilizations used antimatter only for power generation, and even then in tiny quantities. To weaponize it on this scale should have been impossible. "Time's up," Captain announced. What followed was not a battle, but a systematic dismantling. The human ship moved through his formation like a predator through a flock of prey. Its weapons fired with mechanical precision, dark matter erasure beams for the larger ships, antimatter for the medium vessels, and for the smaller craft, something that looked like concentrated that melted through hulls as if they were made of paper. The Defiance itself seemed to dance through space, its spatial manipulation field making it untouchable, while it dealt death with casual efficiency. Some of his ships tried to ram it in desperation, only to find themselves sliding past through folded space, completely unable to make contact. In less than 10 minutes, half his fleet was gone. The survivors were scattering in every direction, their crews abandoning any pretense of military discipline in their desperation to escape. "Sir," his communications officer said, his voice shaking, "Captain is hailing us." The human appeared on screen again and noticed that she didn't look triumphant or cruel. If anything, she seemed tired. "Admiral," she said quietly, "you still have about 100 ships left. I can destroy them all in the next few minutes, or you can order them to retreat and save the lives of your remaining crews. Your choice." Looked at the tactical display, at the scattered remnants of what had been the most powerful fleet in this sector of the galaxy. Then he looked at the human ship, still glowing with barely contained energies that he was only beginning to understand. "How?" he asked. "How is this possible?" Was quiet for a moment. "Admiral, when humanity first reached the stars, we discovered we were alone in a universe that didn't seem to care whether we lived or died. So we decided to make sure we could defend ourselves against anything we might encounter. We've spent the last 300 years turning our entire species into the kind of civilization that others would think twice about threatening. But your ship, the technology, the Defiance, isn't our most advanced vessel, Admiral. It's barely a mid-range patrol craft. We sent it because we didn't think the situation required anything more serious." Felt something break inside him. If this was a mid-range human ship, what were their actual warships capable of? "Stand down," he whispered. Then louder, "All ships stand down. Begin withdrawal immediately," as his surviving vessels limped away from the battlefield, wondered if the Empire would survive the news of this day. More importantly, he wondered what kind of species humanity really was, if this was what they considered a measured response. 3 days later, Admiral stood before the Supreme Council of the Empire, his career, and possibly his life, hanging in the balance. The vast chamber echoed with the angry chittering of 100 council members, their mandibles clicking in agitation as they reviewed the battle reports from the system. "You retreated," Supreme Chancellor stated, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power. "You retreated from a single ship." "Yes, Chancellor. A fleet of 200 vessels, including 12 dreadnoughts, retreated from one primitive human craft." Straightened his posture. "With respect, Chancellor, there was nothing primitive about that ship. The humans have developed weapons technology that surpasses anything in our arsenal." A wave of dismissive clicking swept through the chamber. Chancellor raised one clawed hand for silence. "Explain these weapons." "Dark matter manipulation, devices that erase targets from existence. Spatial distortion fields that make them impossible to hit. Antimatter beam weapons with yields we previously thought impossible." And according to their captain, that vessel was merely a patrol craft, not even their most advanced warship. "Impossible," declared Science Minister, or rising from his position in the upper gallery. "Our physics models clearly show that such technologies require energy outputs beyond any reasonable power source. The humans barely have interstellar travel capabilities. Yet I watched 12,000 of our people simply cease to exist," replied grimly. "I watched our most advanced weapons slide harmlessly past their ship, as if it existed in another dimension entirely." The chamber erupted into argument. Some council members demanded immediate execution for cowardice. Others insisted the reports had to be fabricated. A few voices called for immediate mobilization of the entire Imperial fleet to crush humanity before they could become a greater threat. Chancellor's voice cut through the chaos. "Enough. Admiral, you will return to the human system with Fleet Admiral Eth's battle group. 150 dreadnoughts, 300 heavy cruisers, and support vessels. If the humans truly have only one advanced ship, we will overwhelm them through sheer numbers." Chancellor began carefully. "I respectfully suggest that might not be wise. The human captain implied their ship was not unique. Are you suggesting the humans could field multiple vessels with these impossible weapons?" Before could answer, an aide rushed into the chamber, his breathing labored from running. "Chancellor, urgent report from the border monitoring stations." "What is it?" "Sir, we're detecting multiple human ships approaching our territory. The lead vessel is requesting communication with our government." His eyes narrowed. "How many ships?" "Just 3, sir. But they're much larger than the first one." Minutes later, the main display in the council chamber flickered to life, showing 3 human vessels approaching the edge of space. Where the Defiance had been a simple, utilitarian design, these ships were clearly built for war. Their hulls bristled with weapon emplacements, and they moved with a predatory grace that made even the most experienced military minds in the chamber nervous. The communication channel opened, revealing a human male with graying hair and stars on his collar. This is Admiral James of the United Earth Space Navy. I'm requesting permission to speak with your government regarding recent events in the system. Chancellor stepped forward, his full ceremonial regalia making him an imposing figure. I am Supreme Chancellor. You will explain why human vessels attacked our fleet unprovoked. Admiral's expression didn't change. Chancellor, according to our records, your fleet entered a star system under human protection and opened fire on one of our ships. That hardly constitutes an unprovoked attack on our part. You destroyed nearly 100 ships. Captain exercised considerable restraint. She could have destroyed your entire fleet in the first volley. Paused, letting that sink in. I'm here to discuss a peaceful resolution to this situation. Science Minister, or pushed past the Chancellor. Your ship's capabilities are impossible. No known physics allows for the technologies we observed. Smiled slightly. Minister, you're absolutely correct. The physics you know don't allow for our technologies. But the universe is far larger and more complex than any single species can comprehend. Humanity has had to learn that lesson the hard way. What do you mean? 300 years ago, when we first achieved faster-than-light travel, we encountered something in the void between stars. Something ancient and hostile. It nearly destroyed our entire civilization. We survived only by developing technologies that most species would consider impossible. The chamber fell silent. Continued, his voice taking on a grave tone. We call them the Devourers. They exist in the spaces between normal matter, feeding on the life force of sentient beings. They've been dormant but our expansion into deep space woke them up. We've been fighting them ever since. Fighting what exactly? Chancellor demanded. Entities that exist partially outside normal spacetime. Creatures that can phase in and out of reality at will. Beings that feed on consciousness itself. To fight them, we had to develop weapons that could strike across dimensional barriers, defenses that could protect us from attacks that bypass conventional armor, and power sources that draw energy from the quantum vacuum itself. Admiral felt pieces falling into place. That's why your weapons seem impossible. They weren't designed to fight conventional enemies. Exactly. Dark matter manipulation, spatial distortion, antimatter. These aren't just weapons to us. They're survival tools. The only things that can hurt creatures that barely exist in our dimension. Gestured, and the display changed to show a star chart. Several systems were marked in red. The Devourers are stirring again. Our deep space monitors have detected movement in the void regions near your territory. When they fully awaken, they'll sweep through this entire sector, consuming every sentient mind they encounter. And you're telling us this why? His voice was suspicious. Because we need allies. The Devourers nearly destroyed humanity when we faced them alone. With multiple species working together, sharing resources and knowledge, we might be able to stop them before they reach the inhabited worlds. science minister, or was frantically checking data on his personal device. Chancellor, our deep space sensors have been registering anomalous readings in the outer void regions for the past 6 months. We assumed it was equipment malfunction. It's not malfunction, said grimly. They're testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses. We have perhaps a year before they launch a full assault. Chancellor looked around the chamber at his council members. The anger and blustering of earlier had been replaced by a growing fear. If the humans were telling the truth, the destruction of 100 ships would seem trivial compared to what was coming. What do you propose? He asked finally. A defensive alliance. We share our weapons technology with your engineers. You provide industrial capacity and resources. Together, we prepare to fight an enemy that threatens all sentient life in this galaxy. And if we refuse, his expression remained neutral, but his words carried an unmistakable weight. Then, when the devourers come, you'll face them with conventional weapons that can't even touch them. The same weapons that couldn't scratch the hull of a single human patrol craft. The chamber was silent, except for the nervous clicking of mandibles. Admiral spoke up from his position near the back. Chancellor, I recommend we accept their offer. I've seen what human weapons can do. If there are enemies that require such firepower to defeat, we need every advantage we can get. Nodded slowly. Very well, Admiral, we accept your alliance. But understand, if this proves to be some elaborate deception, the Empire will not forget. Chancellor replied, I hope you never have cause to doubt our sincerity. Because when the devourers come, you'll understand why humanity learned to build ships that can erase matter from existence. You'll understand why we spent 3 centuries turning ourselves into the kind of species that others fear to challenge. You'll understand that sometimes, when you're fighting for the survival of everything you hold dear, impossible is just another word for necessary. 6 months after the alliance was formed, Admiral stood in the command center of Orbital Station Nexus, watching the final preparations for humanity's most ambitious project yet. The massive structure hung in space above a joint construction that represented the combined efforts of 12 different species. The quantum resonance chambers are online, reported Chief Engineer Sarah, the same captain who had single-handedly defeated his fleet, now promoted and assigned to the Joint Defense Project. We're reading stable field harmonics across all 7-dimensional layers. Still found it difficult to believe how much had changed in such a short time. The humans hadn't just shared their weapons technology, they had revolutionized everything. Ships now carried spatial manipulation drives that could fold space-time for instantaneous movement across star systems. Their weapons could fire antimatter streams that turned asteroids into cosmic dust, and their shields could deflect attacks from creatures that existed partially outside normal reality. Admiral, came a voice from behind him. He turned to see Dr. the human physicist who had been teaching alien scientists about dimensional mechanics. The Deep Space Monitoring Network is picking up massive disturbances in sectors 7 through 12. Show me. The main display shifted to show a three-dimensional map of local space. In the empty regions between star systems, reality itself seemed to be rippling like water. The disturbances were growing larger with each passing hour. "They're coming," said quietly. "The Devourers are finally making their move." Activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All vessels, this is Admiral. Begin implementation of Operation Dimensional Shield. All civilian populations are to be evacuated to the protected systems immediately." Across the galaxy, the largest military mobilization in recorded history began. Human ships, with their reality-bending weapons systems, moved into position alongside newly upgraded alien vessels. The combined fleet numbered over 10,000 ships, but knew from the human reports that numbers alone wouldn't determine the outcome of this battle. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving status updates from the outer perimeter." Fleet Admiral reports his battle group is in position at the Helios checkpoint, and the weapon platforms, all 17 dimensional fortress stations, are online and ready. The reality stabilizers are functioning within acceptable parameters. Doctor looked up from his sensor readings, his face pale. "Admiral, you need to see this." The display changed again, this time showing sensor readings from the edge of the galaxy. What saw made his mandibles click involuntarily. The Devourers weren't just emerging from the void, they were tearing holes in space itself, creating doorways between dimensions through which nightmarish forms were pouring into normal reality. "By the ancestors," he whispered, "how many of them are there?" "Our conservative estimate is somewhere around 50,000 individual entities," replied. "But they don't follow normal physics, so counting them is difficult. Some appear to be singular beings the size of moons. Others seem to be collective consciousnesses made up of thousands of smaller components." The first contact came at 14:32 Galactic Standard Time. The outer monitoring station at Rigel 7 simply stopped transmitting. No distress call, no explosion. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't. The 20,000 crew members manning the station vanished with it. "All stations, begin Phase 1 defensive protocols," ordered. The battle began in earnest as the first wave of Devourers encountered the Allied fleet's perimeter defenses. These weren't the small patrol craft that had originally confronted his forces. These were humanity's true warships, vessels the size of cities that carried enough firepower to destroy planets. The UES Prometheus, Admiral's flagship, engaged the lead Devourer entity. The creature was massive, a writhing mass of tentacles and impossible geometries that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Normal weapons would have passed harmlessly through its shifting form, But the Prometheus opened fire with every weapon system humanity had developed. Dark matter erasure beams carved chunks out of the creature's body, making it shriek in frequencies that bypassed hearing and struck directly at the mind. Antimatter torpedoes exploded in bursts of pure annihilation that left temporary holes in spacetime itself. Reality warping. Cannons fired concentrated bullets of twisted physics that forced the entity into a single-dimensional plane where conventional explosives could actually damage it. But for every wound inflicted, 2 more devourers emerged from the rifts. The battle quickly became a desperate fighting withdrawal as the Allied fleet fell back toward the prepared defensive positions. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving emergency signals from the system. The devourers have bypassed our outer defenses and are attacking civilian targets directly." Felt a chill run through his body. The system housed over 40 billion people across 6 worlds. If the devourers reached them, dispatch Battle Group 7 to space. Tell them to use whatever means necessary to protect those civilians. "Admiral," Doctor interrupted, "I'm reading massive power buildups in the human ships. I think they're preparing to activate their ultimate contingency." On the display, the human vessels began to glow with energies that made the sensors scream warnings. These weren't just weapons, they were devices that could fundamentally alter the nature of reality in large regions of space. Admiral's voice came over the command channel. "All Allied vessels move to minimum safe distance immediately. We're implementing Protocol Omega." Had heard whispers of Protocol Omega during the joint planning sessions. The humans had been reluctant to discuss it, saying only that it was a last resort that came with significant costs. "What exactly is Protocol Omega?" he asked. The human scientist looked grim. "It's a dimensional weapons array that can temporarily seal the barriers between dimensions. It will stop the devourers from crossing into our reality, but the energy requirements are substantial." "How substantial?" "Every human ship will have to channel the full output of their quantum reactors through the dimensional manipulation systems. The process will likely destroy their vessels, but it should close the rifts for several decades." Stared at the display in horror. "They're going to sacrifice their entire fleet. It's the only way to ensure the devourers can't return for at least a generation. By then, hopefully, our combined civilizations will have developed better defenses." The human ships began their approach toward the largest dimensional rift, their hulls glowing brighter with each passing moment. The devourers seemed to sense the threat and converged on the human fleet with desperate fury. But the escort vessels held them back with concentrated barrages of exotic weapons. Admiral called over the communication channel, "There has to be another way. Surely we can." His voice cut him off. "Admiral, this is why we built these ships. This is why we spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. Take care of the galaxy while we're gone. The human fleet reached the target coordinates and began the final activation sequence. The space around them began to twist and buckle as they channeled unimaginable energies into forcing the dimensional barriers back into alignment. The last things saw before the sensors overloaded was a brilliant flash of light that seemed to echo across every possible dimension simultaneously. When his vision cleared, the human fleet was gone. The dimensional rifts were sealed. The remaining devourers, cut off from their home dimension, began to fade away like smoke in a strong wind. The galaxy was safe. But humanity, the species that had saved them all, had paid the ultimate price. Or so they thought. 3 weeks after Protocol Omega was implemented, Admiral stood in his private quarters aboard the command station, staring out at the empty space where the human fleet had made their final sacrifice. The galaxy was at peace for the first time in centuries, but the victory felt hollow. An entire species had given their lives to save everyone else. The memorial services had been attended by representatives from every known civilization. The humans were being hailed as the greatest heroes in galactic history. Their sacrifice would be remembered for to come, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with the official story. "Admiral," came a voice from his door communications panel. "Doctor is here to see you. Send him in." The human physicist entered, looking surprisingly cheerful for someone whose entire species had just been wiped out. Had expected to find him devastated, but instead seemed almost excited about something. "Doctor, I wanted to express my condolences again. The loss of your people is—" "Oh, we're not gone," interrupted casually. "That's actually what I came to talk to you about." Stared at him in confusion. "I'm sorry, what?" Smiled and activated a portable holographic projector. The display showed a detailed schematic of a human ship's dimensional manipulation systems. "You see, Admiral, when we designed Protocol Omega, we had to solve a very specific problem. How do you channel enough energy to seal rifts without destroying your ships? But the energy requirements are massive, yes, far more than any ship could produce, so we didn't try to produce it. Touched a control, and the schematic changed to show energy flow patterns. Instead of the ship's reactors feeding power to the weapons systems, the flow was reversed. We didn't channel our reactor output through the dimensional systems. We channeled dimensional energy through our reactors. Essentially, we used the barrier between dimensions as a power source. I don't understand. Your ships disappeared. We saw them destroyed. You saw them translated, corrected, moved from this dimension to another one. When you're drawing power directly from dimensional barriers, you tend to get pulled along with the energy flow." Felt his legs give out, and he sank into his desk chair. "Are you telling me that your entire fleet is still alive?" "Very much so. In fact, they're probably having quite an adventure right about now." Looked genuinely excited. "You see, When we activated Protocol Omega, we didn't just seal the barriers between our dimension and the Devourer's home realm. We also opened a pathway to the dimension where the Devourers originally came from, which means our fleet is currently in the process of finding and eliminating the source of the Devourer threat. Instead of just defending against them, we're taking the fight to their home ground. The implications hit like a physical blow. The humans hadn't sacrificed themselves. They had launched the most audacious offensive operation in history. They had invaded another dimension to wage war against entities that most species couldn't even comprehend. How long before they return? That's complicated. Time flows differently in other dimensions. From their perspective, they might be gone for years. From ours, it could be days or decades, but they will be back. Paused, and his expression grew more serious. Admiral, there's something else you need to know. The reason we were so willing to form alliances, the reason we shared our technology so freely, it wasn't just about fighting the Devourers. What do you mean? Humanity learned a long time ago that the universe is a dangerous place. The Devourers were just one threat among many. Out there, in the deep dark between galaxies, there are things that make the Devourers look like minor pests. Ancient machine civilizations that consume entire star clusters. Hive minds that span multiple galaxies. Entities that exist on such a vast scale that they don't even notice when they destroy inhabited worlds. Gestured to the star chart on the wall. Earth's government has been preparing for these threats for 3 centuries. But we can't face them alone. We need allies. We need friends. We need other species that we can trust to stand with us when the real darkness comes. The real darkness. Admiral, the Devourer invasion was a test. Not for you, for us. We needed to know if the other species in this galaxy were worth saving. If you were capable of growth, of cooperation, of sacrifice when necessary. Thought back to the past few months. The rapid technological advancement. The way human instructors had pushed alien scientists to think beyond their previous limitations. The integration of human and alien technologies into systems that were better than either could create alone. You've been evaluating us, and you passed, smiled. Every species in this alliance has shown the potential to become something greater than they were. To put aside their imperial ambitions to work for the common good. They overcame their xenophobia to accept human advisors. They gave up their isolationism to share resources with their neighbors. And now the real work begins. Our fleet will return eventually, probably with detailed intelligence about the Devourer dimension, and possibly some new allies they've picked up along the way. But more importantly, we'll have proven that this galaxy is worth defending. Stood up and moved to the viewport, looking out at the construction ships that were building new defensive platforms. Admiral, when humanity first reached the stars, we found a universe that seemed hostile and empty. We thought we were alone. It made us hard, perhaps harder than we needed to be. But we're not alone, are we? No, we have friends now. We have allies who will stand with us against whatever comes next. And that changes everything. Joined him at the viewport. In the distance, he could see ships from a dozen different species working together, their crews learning to operate technologies that had seemed impossible just months before. What comes next, Doctor? Next, we prepare for the things that are coming from outside our galaxy. Next, we build a civilization that can survive anything the universe throws at us. Next, we prove that life, intelligence, and compassion are more powerful than entropy and chaos. Paused, then smiled. Next, Admiral, we show the universe why humanity never sends just one ship to do anything important. We send friends. As if summoned by his words, the space near the station began to shimmer. Reality twisted, and suddenly the human fleet materialized out of nothing. Their ships, but intact, their crews alive and victorious. Admiral's voice came over the communications array. This is the UES Prometheus to Orbital Station Nexus. Mission accomplished. The Devourer has been, and we've made some interesting new friends along the way. On the main display, could see additional ships alongside the human fleet, vessels of unknown design, clearly built by species that had never been part of their local galactic community. Admiral called out, "Welcome home." "Thank you, Admiral. It's good to be back. We have a lot to discuss about what we found out there, and some new allies who are very interested in meeting their neighbors." As the combined fleet moved toward the station, realized that this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Humanity hadn't just saved the galaxy. They had opened the door to a larger universe, filled with both wonders and terrors beyond imagination. And they would face all of it together. The human captain had been right all those months ago. When you're fighting for the survival of everything you hold dear, impossible really is just another word for necessary. And sometimes, the best way to defend something is to make sure it's worth defending in the first place.